Hey everyone, Davey here with my review of episode 3 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. entitled The Asset. Now once again, from here on out, all of my reviews for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are going to be spoiler filled. So if you have not seen the episode that I'm currently reviewing, then I suggest that you go watch the episode and then come back and watch this video. But if you have seen the episode or don't care for spoilers, then here we go. The Asset sees Coulson and his team trying to investigate the disappearance of a scientist named Dr. Hall. I can't remember what his first name was, but his last name was Dr. Hall. And he was an official scientist for S.H.I.E.L.D. He worked for them. So obviously when he goes missing en route to a secret location, then it's up to Coulson and the team to figure out where he went and who kidnapped him and what does that person want with him. And I can honestly say that I didn't think I would say this, but I think it was in the pilot episode review, I said that they were going to go ahead and take the approach of having a new case every week. You know, a new monster of the week, or bad guy of the week, or new case of the week, like it is here. And I can't remember whether or not I said that I actually did like that approach to this series, but I think I said it in the tone, I described that approach to the series that the producers were going to take with enthusiasm. Like the tone sounded positive from what I remember me saying. Now, only 3 episodes in, and I can honestly say that I'm actually kind of already getting, I don't want to say tired, but I am willing to go ahead and say, okay, can we take a break from having something new every week and actually go ahead and start developing a plot line over, a few episodes, like 3, 4, 5 episodes, which may actually happen with the next episode. I might be wrong, but the way this episode ended, they have an opportunity here to go ahead and develop a story arc that could last all the way to the end of the season. But we'll have to wait and see, and there's actually a good chance that that's probably not going to happen. But we'll find out. But it does, that facet of this episode in which they have to go ahead and figure out why the scientist disappeared is done in a way like the other 2 episodes. They almost hit it note for note, beat by beat, the exact same tropes that the first episodes did, where they're trying to figure out this new mystery. And it plays out just like you would expect, where the scientists, Fitz and Simmons are trying to figure out all the technological and scientific stuff. Ward still has tension with Skye, saying, "Oh my gosh, she might be." She might compromise the mission. I don't know about her. This might be a bad idea. But once again, Coulson says, no, we need her. That in that mentor type of role that he is for this group. And I do like that the episode ended the tension between Coulson and Agent May. Now she's not being a bit of a I don't want to call her that word, but I'm just going to go ahead and say be a little whiny of her not wanting to see combat. But at the end of the episode, she just says, screw it. If I'm going to be in this, I might as well accept the fact that I'm going to see combat and just accept it and say, okay, fine. I'll go back onto the field. I'm expecting full combat. I might as well take it like a man, despite the fact that I'm a woman. Who can take it like a man, even more? Let's just clarify that. But I do like the fact that she went ahead and accepted the responsibility of being an agent out in the field by the end of this episode. So I like that little subplot was tied up very well. And Skye, the reason why this episode is called The Asset is because it actually has double meaning. It refers to, obviously, the scientist that goes missing in terms of the technical side of this episode, in terms of the team and Coulson trying to figure out the mystery as to why he was abducted, or kidnapped, not abducted. But it also has double meaning for Skye. Skye is often referred to as the asset by Coulson and a few others within the team, not so much Ward because he sees her more of detrimental to the group, but Coulson sees her as a valuable asset for that group. And it's a double meaning because this episode does rely on Skye, but also on how Skye is actually going to help out the group and in missions. And she ends up doing that by the end of the episode. Now, the way she goes about it is a little typical. It's a little by the numbers. Like the way the mission plays out, whether it be the technical side of how certain person's going to get from point A to point B, how they're going to be able to infiltrate this mansion while having Skye distract the main bad guy, and all that, plays out very typical like you see on TV shows of this kind. But also the resolved, or somewhat resolved, tension between Ward and Skye. How about how she's the Tony Stark of the group, whereas Ward is more of the Captain America. The way they come to terms with each other by the end of the episode even though it's kind of nice, and I will admit that I wasn't a huge fan of Skye at the beginning of this episode. She was doing that cockiness that we know Stark himself to do, but Robert Downey Jr. delivers it in such a charming and charismatic way, despite being a bit of an asshole. You know, Tony Stark has always been a bit of an asshole. You guys got to admit that, but he's charming and charismatic in a way where you can't help but just laugh and accept the things that he says. Skye, on the other hand, she just doesn't come across, and the actress who plays her, don't know her name, but she's no Robert Downey Jr. Let's just say that. So obviously, her, as charmful as she tries to be, she just didn't really work for me at the beginning of this episode. And I started to see why some people couldn't stand her. I've read some other reviews, watched other video reviews on YouTube of people talking about this show and how much they actually despised Skye. In episode 1 and 2, I didn't exactly like her, but I was okay with her. I tolerated her. Like, I didn't mind her. I wasn't a fan, but I accepted her. Just like Agent May accepts her responsibility now. At the beginning of this mission, I started to feel that sense of dread, of dislike in this character. I was like, oh, no. Please don't go the route where that everybody sees you as, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. But fortunately, by the end of this episode, she jumped back to being just an okay character, to where I'm like, okay, you're alright, I'll give you a pass. And she redeemed herself in that way. I gotta admit, though, I did like the villains in this episode. One is the villain from the get-go, alright? You see this guy, you instantly go, this is the bad guy. But I liked him. I don't know, the actor and the character, I'm not gonna say that I loved them, I wish to see more of them, even though he did get away. So he might be brought back. And maybe they could flesh him out more instead of being, he was a little mustache twirling, but there were certain moments where his dialogue sounded, it played off very well, especially when he was talking with Skye and how he was offering her a job. I actually kind of liked the dialogue that was coming out of him, and I thought that he was a good bad guy. He was a decent bad guy. And the other bad guy, who you didn't think was initially was going to be one of the main villains, but for a different purpose, was Dr. Hall himself. I like the actor as well, and I like the fact that they went ahead and they brought in that villain that we have seen before, but I liked how he worked here. I liked how we saw that villain that was misunderstood, and reminded us of those villains that could have been heroes, but instead, they justify themselves. I love villains that justify themselves. But in a good way, in a way where it doesn't feel like artificial. I love it when when they explain the reasons why they're doing what they're doing and why they think it's good for them to be doing this, and they actually make sense. I really dig that, even for shows of this nature, and I really liked his character. And of course, when he got dropped into that metal thing, I'm like, two things came to mind. One, how does that exactly turn off the electricity that it was emitting and the catastrophic circumstances that it was going to bring upon that compound? How exactly did that happen? If any of you guys, obviously you guys watched the episode if you're still watching this, or either that or maybe you don't care for spoilers, but if you did watch the episode, please post in the comments, did Fitz and Simmons ever mention how putting a human being in that thing will turn it off? Because I didn't get that. I honestly didn't understand it. I really wish, even if it's made up science, I really wish that Fitz and Simmons would have explained it at least, instead of just dropping him in there. And granted, in the next episode, maybe Coulson can go. Well, then again, he's already at the plane. But they could show it in the next episode. Coulson telling, "Yeah, I dropped your teacher in the metal," which could lead to some good drama, because after all, Fitz and Simmons, this was their professor back in the day. So this could cause tension between Coulson and Fitz and Simmons, and this could lead to an interesting subplot. And one that I'm hoping gets a little more fleshed out than the one between May and Coulson, because even though I liked it, it didn't last very long, and it didn't get expanded, and didn't lead to any sort of character development, because by the end of this episode, Coulson is still Coulson and May is still May. Whereas the potential to have a three-way tension between Coulson, Fitz, and Simmons, after Coulson says that, "Yeah, I dropped your teacher in that metal thing," could lead to some interesting stuff. But the second thing that came to mind is that He's gonna come back. He's gonna come back, I know it, because this is the world of the Avengers. How else could you properly introduce the world to a new supervillain to the world? And obviously, we have the scene at the very end. Also, that's another thing. It seems like from now on, every episode's gonna have like a 30-second scene at the very end after it officially ends. That would have been the end credit scene of a Marvel movie, but instead they put it at the very end, much like they did last week with Nick Fury. Here, obviously, the stinger at the end is that you see a hand pop out of the metal substance, or the gravitonium, whatever you call it, and of course he's gonna come back, and that is why I feel like if they bring back this character and flesh him out and make him a proper villain for these guys to go up against, without the need of the Avengers, and prove that they can be mighty without the Avengers, and like I said, create a nice little story arc that could lead up until the end of season 1 at least. That would be very nice, and use this guy, Graviton Man, whatever you prefer to call him, as the central villain. That would be pretty awesome. And hey, who knows? He might use his newfound powers to break out the Ian Quinn, and that's his name, the billionaire rich guy that Skye was trying to kind of seduce. I don't want to say seduce because this is a PG, show, even though they said the word balls. And I did appreciate that there weren't as many Avengers references as before. In fact, hardly any. So I really liked episode 3, The Asset, but I didn't feel like it did anything new over the previous episode, and especially not in the pilot, because there's a huge lack of good dialogue. I mean, that's not to say that it's filled with bad dialogue. It's just that, the nice lines that we at least got in episode 2. I mean, we got plenty of them in episode 1 thanks to Joss Whedon. But episode 2 had a few. This one, not so much, and it was a little dry on the humor side. But I did like that we got an interesting origin to a potential supervillain that the team could go up against, in which they can prove themselves that they're just as mighty as the Avengers. And again, it could prove that the writers could come up with a really decent story arc that can lead up all the way until episode 1 and keep them busy without having to introduce a new thing every week and start to hit the same beats and notes that this episode kind of did in comparison to episode 2. Because that's one thing, is that if episode 4 is practically the exact same thing, then it's probably then when I'm going to start saying that this formula is getting a little stale. But it's a little early to say that, to say the least. I think right now it's safe to say that I'm still digging the formula, but there are some signs, some early little warning signs. I don't want to say warning, caution signs. Some early caution signs that say that maybe it's about time that you change it up a bit. And you giving yourself a great opportunity here by introducing what could be a formidable supervillain, along with a secondary villain to go up against the team. I don't want to call them the Avengers, but to go up against S.H.I.E.L.D. And I do like that you despite almost treading the waters of annoyancy, you managed to bring back Skye to a more tolerable character by the end, and make Ward, in my opinion, by the end of the episode, I liked Ward more than in the other 2 episodes because of the fact that Skye was being a little annoying towards the beginning. I was siding with Ward more, so I did like that. Coulson is still great, and I do like that it resolved the issue that he had with May about seeing combat on the field. And despite hitting the same tropes as the previous episode, I will say that one particular trope that I'm happy that this episode hit over the first episode is that it delivered a rather kick-ass climax. I really liked the Inception thing that it had going, turning the room around and they were on the side and on the ceiling. And I did like that Coulson kind of went up against an equal where he didn't have to rely on an awful lot of combat except using his more psychological approach to kind of talk this guy into doing the right thing. I'm going to go ahead and give The Asset an 8.0 out of 10, which is a B-. Still fun enough for me to keep watching, but there are some caution signs that are starting to appear that the writers should definitely take into consideration to keep the show from becoming repetitive. I'll be back next week with my review of episode 4, and until next time guys, keep checking out my videos, and I'll see you guys next time.